Hi guys! Today I'm going to show you how to knit the Little Frills Shawlette. Now this shawlette is part of the King Cole Make-Along for 2023 and I am so thrilled to be one of the contributing designers. This shawlette ends up being, pretty good width here. It's just not as deep as a regular shawl, so that makes it work up quickly. And the yarn used is the Finesse by King Cole. It's a cotton silk blend that is just oh so scrumptious and luscious, and it's just so great to work with. It doesn't use much yarn. The main body used only about 2.5 balls. The contrast color used about 1 1/4 skeins. So there's really not a whole lot of yarn that's used on this, and it works up quickly. It just uses knits, purls, yarn overs, and then there's a pretty little Picot border here. Now, before we get started, please remember to go to my website where you can see the free pattern. I'll have the link down below, and remember to like and subscribe. So let's grab your needles, grab some yarn, let's get started. The materials for this shawlette were provided to me by King Cole, and the yarn that we're using is the King Cole Finesse Cotton Silk DK. This is a lovely, lovely yarn. It has 77% cotton, 23% silk, and there's approximately 131 yards or 120 meters in a ball. Now this is in the color blush, which was my main color, so for the shawl you're going to need about 315 yards or 288 meters. I used about 2.5 balls for the shawlette. Now the contrast color is the color Ice, and for this one you'll need about 167 yards or 153 meters. I used about 1 1/4 balls for the shawlette. You're also going to need a pair of scissors, and totally optional is a locking stitch marker or a scrap piece of yarn, just so that you can mark the right side of your shawlette just for the first few rows until you start seeing the pattern develop. And you'll also need a pair of circular knitting needles. Now these are a US size 9 or a 5.5 millimeter, and you'll need them to be at least 30 inches or 75 centimeters long. To begin, we're going to start with our main color, in my case the color blush, and we're going to cast on 81. Now I'm using the German twist cast on method, so if you haven't done that cast on method before, I'll walk you through it real quick. So my working yarn is right here, so I'm holding that to the back where my ball of yarn will be. And then my yarn tail is up front. And I pulled out quite a bit just to make sure I don't run out in the middle of my cast. Or so I don't run out when I get to say number 78, and then you're stuck with 3 stitches short. So we're going to do the German twist cast on method for 81 stitches. So I'm going to cup the yarn just like so, and then I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to do a little scooping action underneath. Then I'm going to go in, grab the yarn, and pull it through. So we'll do that again. Under, through, grab the yarn, pull it through again. And I'll try that just a little bit slower. We're going under those 2 strands, going in through that loop that's around your thumb, pulling the needle up to grab that working yarn, and then pulling it through. And then just tighten it up. So just like so. And this makes it just a little bit stretchy and makes for a great bind off for this project, or a great cast on for this project. And that's your German twist cast on. Now I'm going to finish casting on, and I will meet you after I've done that so we can begin row 1. Now this project does have a double selvage edge that we have on each side that we're going to be working. And it's like a little mini I-cord edge. And I do that just to keep it nice and clean. So what we're going to do for row 1 is begin that by slipping our first stitch. And we're going to slip purlwise with the yarn in the back. Then we're going to knit 1. And that's your double selvage edge. Now we're going to increase by 1 stitch by doing a knit into the front and to the back. So we'll knit into the front, and then we'll knit into the back of the same stitch. Then we're just going to simply knit across until we get to the last 3 stitches. So just knit across, and then I will meet you at the end of this row when we just have 3 stitches left. Coming down to the end of row 1, to where I have just 3 stitches left now. So now what I'm going to do is a knit front and back into that stitch, in the front and in the back, to increase it by 1. Then we're going to work that double selvage edge by slipping purlwise with the yarn in the back. Then we're going to bring that yarn to the front and purl 1. And that's your row 1. For row 2, we're going to begin by slipping that first stitch with the yarn in the back, and then we're just going to purl. So we're going to purl across until you get to the last 2 stitches, and then I will meet you there. I'm coming up to my last 2 stitches of row 2. And when we get to them, what we're going to do is bring our yarn to the front, and we're going to slip the next stitch purlwise, and then purl 1. And that's row 2. For row 3, we're going to do a repeat of row 1. So I'll just get you started on that. And that's where we're going to slip that first stitch purlwise, knit 1, and then we're going to knit into the front and to the back. In the front and the back. And then you just knit across to the last 3 stitches. And with that last 3 stitches, you're going to do a knit front and back, slip 1 purlwise, and then purl 1. And then I'll meet you for row 4. For row 4, we're going to have the wrong side facing. And what row 4 essentially is doing is it is creating the bottom part of a frame for the next row in which we're going to be doing the yarn overs. Now for each bit of this pattern, when you have a yarn over row, it's going to be framed with the row before it and the row after it with that little garter ridge. So it's super easy. I think you'll like how easy this row is. So we're going to begin by slipping the first stitch purlwise with the yarn into the back, or with the yarn held at the back. Then we're going to purl the next stitch. So bring that yarn up front, purl that next stitch. Then, instead of purling, you're going to knit to the last 2 stitches. So you'll just knit across, and this is going to create that little garter ridge on the right side. And you'll do this to the very last 2 stitches, and when you get to those last 2 stitches, you will slip with the yarn in the front 1 stitch, and then you'll purl that last stitch. So I will meet you at the end of this row so that we can do row 5. For row 5, we're going to be working our yarn over row. Now in this one, we're only still going to increase the 1 stitch on each end, but we'll be doing yarn overs to add a nice little element of interest to the project. So we're going to begin by slipping that first stitch purlwise with the yarn in the back, and then we're going to knit 1. Then we're going to knit into the front and back, so in the front and then the back. And now we're going to begin our pattern repeat. So we're going to begin by knitting 2 together, and then we'll do a yarn over. So knit these first 2 stitches together and do a yarn over. That's the repeat. So knit 2 together and yarn over. And you're going to continue that repeat until you get to the last 4 stitches. And I'll meet you when we get to those last 4. So just remember to knit 2 together and yarn over. And I will see you in just a moment. I'm at my last 4 stitches for row 5 now. So I just did that last knit 2 together. So I'm going to yarn over, and now we're going to knit 1. Then we're going to knit into the front and into the back, that same stitch. Then we're going to slip 1 with the yarn in the back, bring that yarn forward, and purl 1. And that's your row 5. Now row 6 is a repeat of row 4. So remember where we did this little garter ridge by doing the knit on the wrong side? That's exactly what we're going to be doing with row 6. So I'll get you started on that. So we'll begin by slipping the first stitch purlwise with the yarn in the back. Then we're going to bring the yarn to the front and purl one. Then we will knit to the last 2 stitches. So you'll just knit across, and then when you get to those last 2 stitches, you'll slip one with the yarn in front, and then you will purl one. So I'll meet you at the end of this row. Rows 7 through 11 are very simple. They're just repeats of rows 1 and 2. You'll just repeat rows 1 through 2 more times, and then for row 11 you repeat row 1 once more. So rather than walking you through those particular rows, I'll put up a little slide here so that way you can see the directions for it. Or this would actually be a really good time to go to the website so that you can see the pattern, because it will help you a little bit easier because it is the very simple, the double selvage row. Well, on the right side, you get your double selvage and then your increase and you knit across. On the wrong side, you do your double selvage and then you purl across. So it's very, very simple. So just repeat rows 1 through 2 more times, and row 1 more time. And I'll meet you for row 12. So I've repeated rows 1 through 2 more times, and row 1 once more. So now we're ready for row 12. And row 12 is going to start this section again. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to repeat row 4, row 5, and then row 4 once more. And this is where we're knitting on the wrong side. This is where we do our knit 2 together yarn overs, and then we're knitting on the wrong side again. So I'll get you started off with row 12. Now remember, row 12 is a repeat of row number 4. So we're going to begin by slipping this first stitch with the yarn in the back. Then we're going to purl one. Now we're going to start making that garter ridge. So we're just going to knit across until we get to those last 2 stitches. And when we get to those last 2 stitches, we will slip one with the yarn in the front, and then we will purl one. And then I'll meet you for row 13. Row 13 is a repeat of row number 5, and that's the one where we did these wonderful yarn overs and knit 2 togethers. So I'll get you started on that row. So we'll begin by slipping one purlwise with the yarn in the back. Then we're going to knit one. Then knit into the front and knit into the back of the same stitch. Now we begin our pattern repeat, and that's to knit 2 together and yarn over. So knit 2 together, yarn over. And you do that all the way down until you get to the last 4 stitches. When you get to those last 4, you will knit 1, then knit into the front and the back, slip 1, and purl 1. And then I'll meet you for row 14. Row 14 is a repeat of row number 4, and that's that one where we put that neat little garter edge underneath our yarn over knit 2 togethers. So I'm going to get you started on that row, and we will start by just slipping this first stitch with the yarn in the back, and then purling one. After you do that, just knit to the very last 2 stitches, where you will end with a slipping of 1 stitch with yarn in the front, and then you will purl 1. So I will meet you at the end of this row. Now rows 15 and 16 of this panel are a repeat of rows 1 and 2. So I'll put the slides up so that way you can see what those directions are, but it is just knit on the right side, purl on the wrong side with that double selvage row, and then also that knit into the front and the back on the right side. And you'll notice how your double selvage should be coming out. It should look like a nice little braid, and it just adds a nice clean finishing touch to this side of the shawl. Now when this is all done, it's going to spread out as such, and we'll probably just tuck this in right here by weaving in our ends so that way that little nub doesn't show. But yeah, so just repeat rows 1 and 2, and I'll be back to begin panel number 2 with you. For panel 2 of this shawlette, we are going to be increasing its size exponentially. But before we begin that part with the increases, we're going to build a little bit more of a foundation. So we're going to be continuing in this process with the stockinette stitch, working up to towards the next panel. So what you're going to be doing is repeating rows 1 through 4 of the first panel. So from panel 1 will be rows 1 through 4. And row 1 is where you knit across. Row 2 is where you do the purl. Row 1 is where you knit. Or row 3 is where you knit, just like row 1. And then row 4 is where we're going to begin that little garter accent piece right there. So let's repeat rows 1 through 4 of the first panel, and then I'll meet you here for row 5. So I've finished doing my repeats, and now we have this nice little garter edge right here. Now we're going to begin having a lot of fun. You ready to watch this baby grow? Because this is the row where it's going to start. So in this row, we are going to nearly double our stitch count. And this is going to be what begins the ruffly effect of this shawlette. So how we're going to start is we're still going to continue with this 2-stitch selvage. And how we're going to begin that is first we'll do a slip. And then slip purlwise with the yarn in the back. And then we're going to knit 1. And now we are also done doing our knit into the front and the back stitches. So we're not doing those anymore. So we're going to begin our pattern repeat now. And we're going to start that by just knitting 1 and yarning over. And that's your pattern repeat. So knit 1, yarn over. Knit 1, yarn over. And you'll continue doing that until you get to the last 3 stitches. So I'm going to work my way down to those last 3 and then I'll meet you there. I'm coming up towards the end of our increase row. Now we have 3 stitches left. Don't forget to do that last yarn over. Now you're going to knit 1, slip, and purl 1. And then that is it for your row 5. And there's a lot more stitches on this cable than there was to start with. But this is really going to create that neat effect. And we're just going to do this a couple of times. But now for row 6, we're going to repeat row 4, which is that one where we do the knitting on the wrong side to add that neat little garter edge effect. So I'll get you started on that row, So we're going to slip with the yarn in the back and purl 1. Then just knit down to the last 2 stitches. And when you get to those last 2 stitches, you'll end by slipping 1 stitch with the yarn in the front, and then you'll purl that last one. And then I'll meet you for row 7. Row 7 is a row that you will be repeating quite a bit in this pattern, but it's pretty easy. So the way that we do it is we are going to begin by slipping that first stitch purlwise with the yarn in the back, and then we're going to knit across. So you just knit across until you get to the last 2 stitches, and then you're going to slip 1 with yarn in the back and purl 1. So I will meet you at the end of this row for row 8. Row 8 is also a row that you'll be repeating quite a bit throughout this pattern, and it's also pretty easy. So we'll begin by slipping with the yarn into the back. So slip a stitch purlwise, yarn in the back, and then you just purl to the last 2 stitches. And when you get to those last 2 stitches, you will slip 1 purlwise with the yarn in the front, and then you'll purl that last stitch. And that's all there is to it. So I'll finish out this row and I will meet you for row 9. For the next 3 rows, you'll repeat rows 7 through 8 one more time, and then row 7 once more. And then I'll meet you for row 12. And I'll put up a little slide so that way you can see the written directions. And I'll see you back for row 12. For row 12, we're going to be doing a repeat of row 4. And that's that one where we have this lovely little garter ridge. So I'll get you started on this row. Now we begin by slipping with the yarn in the back, and then purl 1. Then we just knit across to the last 2 stitches. And when you get to those last 2 stitches, you will slip with the yarn in front and then you will purl 1. So I will finish this row and I will meet you for row 13. For row 13, we're going to be adding in another row of eyelets just as we did down here. So we won't be doing the increase as we had done just previously. So the way that we're going to do this is by beginning by slipping 1 with the yarn in the back. Then we're going to knit 1. And now we begin our pattern repeat. And that is to knit 2 together and yarn over. Knit 2 together, yarn over. And that's your pattern repeat. So you'll do that until you get down to the last 3 stitches. And when you come up to those last 3, you will knit 1, slip 1 with yarn in the back, and purl 1. So I'm going to finish out this row and I will meet you for row 14. Row 14 is a repeat of row 4 where we add that little garter ridge to the top of our eyelet row. And then you're going to repeat rows 7 through 8 2 more times and row 7 once more. So I'm going to work those next 6 rows. So it's row 4, 7, 8, 7, 8, 7. I'm going to work those rows and then I'll meet you back here. To continue, you'll repeat rows 4 through 18 once more, and then I'll meet you back to work on panel 3. Now to work our last panel, which is panel number 3, we are going to be using our contrast color, which in my case is the color Ice. And what you're going to do is repeat row 7 one time, and then repeat rows 4 through 6 one time. And these are rows from panel number 2. So that first row is going to be re-knit across, and then you'll work that garter ridge row, then you'll do an increase, and then you'll do that garter ridge row one more time. And then I'll meet you at the end of that so that we can work on the bind off. Now we're ready to do the bind off. And although this bind off is not hard, it is time consuming. So this would be a great time for you to find a podcast, turn on a movie, or a favorite series, because this is going to take a little bit of time. So what we are doing is the Picot bind off. And how we do that is we're going to begin by casting on a couple stitches using a cable cast on method, and then we will bind off 4 more stitches. Then we're going to cast on 2, bind off 4. So it does take some time because of that. Now to do the first couple bits of it, we're going to do a cable cast on of 2 stitches. So I'm going to insert my needle between these 2 stitches right here. And I'm going to grab that yarn, pull it through, and then place that onto my needle. And I'm going to do that one more time. Sometimes they get a little bit finicky, but that's okay. And then place that one back on that needle. Then we're going to bind off 4 stitches. Okay, so that is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we have this stitch left here on our right hand needle. So we're going to place that back onto our left hand needle, and then we're going to repeat that process. So let's go through this one more time. A cable cast on between these 2 stitches by inserting our needle, grabbing that yarn and pulling it through, place that on the needle. Then we're going to go through these 2 stitches right here, grab that yarn, pull it through, place it on that left hand needle. Then we're going to bind off 4 stitches. So you knit that first stitch and knit that second stitch, and then pass that first stitch over. that stitch, pass that stitch over. So that's 2 that are bind off. And we're going to knit this other one, bind it off, and then this is our last one. And then we place that last stitch back onto that left-hand needle. And that is your Picot bind off. And this is what's going to give it a super ruffly edge, and it adds just a whole lot of interest and texture to it. But that is it for this shawlette. You'll just continue doing the bind off until you have no stitches left to bind off. Then you just weave in your ends, give it a block, and enjoy your shawl. So I do hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you later with more patterns and tutorials. Thanks a bunch. Bye-bye. 89 stitches or so, and you work up to quite the I am struggling. That we use is Finesse. It's the King Cole Finesse. It's a cotton silk blend, and it is just oh so soft. It's just lovely. And I just lost my train of thought. I need to take. Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to do the little, and I do have the link down below, and it is a free pattern, as well as I did it again.